and welcome to day 16 of our 30-day Learn to Sew challenge. In today's video, I'm going to share a simple 10-minute project that uses only one fabric and a little bit of hardware. If you were watching the last two videos part of this series, we created a set of coasters and fabric napkins. So to coordinate with those items, today we are going to make a set of napkin rings. This project is a simple way to dress up napkins for parties and holiday gatherings. Choose seasonal printed fabrics or neutral solids to coordinate with your home decor and use time and time again. The edges of these napkin rings are left raw, so you'll need to use fabric that doesn't fray, such as faux leather, cork fabric, craft tex, or leather. This is a great project for beginners to continue to build their sewing skills. So this project will teach how to cut fabrics, how to cut and sew simple curves, practice on top stitching, and installing a piece of hardware. So let's begin. First, you'll start by cutting out your pieces. For each napkin ring, you will need to cut 2 1.5 wide by 6 long pieces. So I'm going to make 2 napkin rings, so I've cut 4 pieces. If you want to make 4 napkin rings, you'll need to cut 8 pieces and so on. So for each napkin ring, you'll need 2 pieces of fabric. You'll also need 1 short stud button for each napkin ring. So since I'm making 2 today, I've got my 2 stud buttons. You'll also need a small screwdriver, a rotary punch, a chalk or pen, some scissors, basting spray. This is a temporary adhesive spray, or you could use double-sided basting tape. This is 1/4 inch wide. And you'll also need a spool of polyester thread. Also, another helpful notion to use is a Teflon foot for sewing over cork fabric or faux leather. So start with 1 piece of fabric for each napkin ring. You can set the other 2 pieces aside and position the fabric with the wrong side face up. Grab your spool of thread and position it in one corner of the fabric on one end, and then trace the outer edge of the spool from edge to edge on the fabric. Then you'll repeat and position the spool in the opposite corner on the same short side and trace the edge of the spool. And then you'll repeat to round the corners on one end of your other napkin pieces. And you can even use just a standard ink pen because this will be on the wrong side. And I switched over to an ink pen so that way it's easier for you to see. Then use a pair of fabric scissors and cut along each of the marked lines to round one end. And you'll want to cut just inside the line so that way you cut off the marking. Next, we're going to position 1 rounded piece over each straight piece. So you are going to place them wrong sides together. And since we're using materials that can't be pinned, I recommend using adhesives such as the temporary basting spray or basting tape. So I'm going to take my basting spray and spray 1 of the rounded pieces. And you'll want to spray this away from your sewing machine or even outdoors because some sprays have a strong odor and you don't want to get anything sticky that is in your sewing area. But for this demonstration, I'm just going to quick spray it. So after spraying, you'll center 1 rounded piece over the straight piece and just lightly press down to adhere the pieces together. If you're using basting tape, take your rounded piece and add some basting tape to the wrong side. I'm just going to add 2 pieces and just trim off the tape. Press down on the paper to make sure it's adhered, and then you can peel away the paper. So just like with the basting spray, you'll take your rounded piece and place it wrong sides together with the straight piece and align the straight short edge and the long sides. And just lightly press down to adhere it in place. If you'd like, instead of using the spray or the tape and you have some sewing clips, you can add clips to hold the layers together. I really do prefer the adhesives though, just to make sure that everything is secure and it helps prevent the pieces from shifting. But you could certainly use both or just one or the other. Now let's begin sewing. I've already wound a bobbin and threaded my machine with thread to match my fabric. I recommend setting up your machine for a 2.5 millimeter straight stitch length. Also, attach a Teflon foot to your machine if you have one. And be sure to watch the other videos in this series if you have questions about setting up your machine. Take one of your napkin ring pieces and start by sewing with an 1/8 inch seam allowance along the short straight edge. So I'm going to lower my presser foot onto the fabric and sew forward 3 stitches and then backward 3 stitches. And take your time sewing around the entire napkin ring. So as you reach the long edge, just stop with your needle down about an 1/8 inch from the raw edge to the needle and pivot your fabric, lower the foot back down, and then you can continue sewing around the entire piece. So as you reach the curve, the easiest way to sew around the curve is to stop and raise your presser foot a little bit to pivot. Sew a few stitches, and then you'll continue around the curve to make sure that you maintain your even seam allowance. Then make sure to backstitch as you reach the beginning where you first started. Then you'll raise the needle and raise your presser foot and trim your threads flush with the fabric. Then you'll repeat the same steps to sew the remaining napkin rings. After sewing each piece, you'll use your scissors to trim the excess fabric even with the curved edge. And you can just double check, flip it over to make sure everything is even and aligned, and trim anywhere to make sure that it's nice and smooth and the way that you want it to be. Now we're ready to install the hardware. So take one napkin ring, whichever side you want to be the right side, which will be the side that faces outward, and you're going to measure a 1/2 inch in from each short edge and mark in the center. And I'm just going to eyeball it and then repeat for the remaining napkin rings. Set your rotary punch to the smallest hole size and punch a hole at the mark which is nearest to the straight short edge. Next, remove the screw from the stud button and push the threaded end through the hole, and then screw the stud buttons back together. You'll want the screw against the wrong side and the stud against the right side. And use the screwdriver to tighten the stud in place. Next, set your rotary punch to a medium size and punch a hole at the remaining marks. Then take your scissors and cut a 1/4 inch long slit towards the stud. You'll repeat the same steps to finish up your set of napkin rings. Congratulations on finishing another project. Let us know in the comments below if you enjoyed this tutorial. I love designing projects that are easy to make using luxury fabrics like faux leather and cork fabric. We'd love to see your completed project and your progress during this series. Share photos using #SallieTomato, #DIY napkin rings, and #30-day sewing challenge. We do have 3 more projects coming up in this 30-day challenge. These first 3 projects were great for warming up to your sewing machine, working with different fabrics and notions, and the next 3 projects are a little bit more involved. So we've divided the projects up into 4 mini tutorials. That way the projects are much more manageable and you can easily follow along each day. I often hear people say that I don't have time to sew or I don't have time to try a new project. So that's why I've broken up the tutorials into the different parts to make a little bit of progress each day and I think you'll find that the projects come together even more quickly than you anticipated. So I look forward to sewing with you another day, and until then, happy sewing!